Hi everyone, this is Krishna Vandanapu, Business Applications MVP. Welcome to my channel. We are doing Power Apps Function 0 to Hero series. This is part 7. In this video, we will be discussing about how to use filter function on 11 different type of SharePoint fields. Before we dive into the topic, I would like to let you know at end of this video, I will be sharing one tip which will be useful for your daily development in Power Apps. Hereafter, all my videos will carry one tip at end of the video. I hope that will help you to expedite your development. Let us see what are all the various columns we can implement filter in Power Apps with respect to SharePoint as the backend data source. As you see, these are all the 11 different type of fields we can perform filter in Power Apps on SharePoint as the backend data source. They are single line of text, multi-line of text, number column, yes or no column, person, which is nothing but people picker group with single and multi-line, date column, date and time column, choice with single and multiple selection, lookup column, currency column, last but not least, task outcome column. I logged on to Power Apps Maker Studio and I have added my SharePoint list as the data source. And when I examine the list settings, I have single line of text, number, choice, another choice field for multi-selection, and people picker field. This one is single selection and staff as multi-selection. As we all know that staff will be more than one person. Currency for exam fee, exam result as task outcome column, and valid for a next attempt as a yes or no column, and exam result date as only date column. SharePoint will show date time though you select only date as the required stuff. Date only. If you see date time format, I said date only for exam result date column, whereas exam date time is date and time, because we should show what is the date and time for the exam. And coming to the lookup column, I have created exam locations as a lookup column, which is taking a lookup from another list called exam locations. Here I have created 4 locations as exam locations, and I'm referring that as part of my SharePoint list. And exam notification details, I made it as a multi-lines of text because as part of exam notification details, I'm also notifying the students that what is the ID proof they need and additional details. So now that we know our list schema, let us go ahead and perform filter operation on each and every column type. The first column I would like to discuss here is single line of text. I'm adding a gallery. The reason why I'm adding a gallery, I want to filter the data to this gallery for each and every column type. For this gallery, I'm specifying my data source as student information, and also I'm changing the layout from default layout to title and subtitle. For a moment, I'm not very fussy about what's the data as part of my gallery. If you see, I see all my data as part of this gallery. The time I scroll down, it will again load the next set of data. Okay, let us perform the filter on top of this gallery with single line of text filter followed by data source. The first parameter for filter is source. What is my data source? Student information is my data source, followed by the logical test. The logical test here will be my column name, which is state, because state is a single line of text as part of our SharePoint list. State equal to Alabama. Now what happens is it will go ahead and filter my SharePoint list where the state name as Alabama. And if you want to see what is the result as a quick view, which we have already discussed as part of our previous video, this is our result set, a quick view. It will show the top 10 records. And can I perform with more than one column? Yes, definitely we can perform. And we know that and is a clause which we can join more than one logical test to perform against the data source. And if I go here, I have one more field as single line of text, which is category. Let me see what are all the values as part of category. Category has all students as this is the category I want to filter against. Category equal to this. Now my filter is performing a composite condition, which is more than one column it is doing. I am filtering my data with one single line of text column as Alabama and another single line of text column as category. I can say R. So what happens is the result of this data set is if the state is Alabama or my category is this. So earlier if and means the state must be Alabama and category must be children with disabilities. This is how we can perform filter with a single line of text in Power Apps with SharePoint as a backend. The next field is number column. Number column, I have number of valid test takers. Let us see how we can perform. Again, filter syntax will never go change. Filter data source followed by my logical test. Now the column name is number of test takers. Since that it is a number column, I can use equal, greater, less than, all these conditions as part of my logical test. Now, first one I wanted to perform as number of test takers is greater than 1. So this has given me one set of list. Now, if I say number of valid test takers as 11, I can say as equal to 11. And if you notice, for number column, I need not to specify my value within the double quotes because it is a number field. If in case of single line of text, I need to enclose my value with double quotes. If you notice, this also gives you the result set, but I got a delegation warning. We cannot evaluate your formula because the value being compared in the formula aren't the same. The result set is not accurate since the data type is number and I'm specifying the value as string. So this is how we can perform filter on number field. The third field I wanted to discuss here is people picker with single selection. If I go back to my SharePoint list and see, I have two columns or two fields as people picker fields. One is the principal name and the staff. Principal name will always be single selection because I cannot have more than one principal to a college or a school. And staff will definitely have more than one. Let us see how we can perform for principal. For people picker, how we will have to specify is specify the column name followed by which way you want to compare your value against the people picker field. If you see here, I can filter my data source with people picker along with the property email, job title, department name, display name. So in this scenario, I wanted to go with email. How we will perform this is column name and the which property against which property we want to compare followed by the value. This is the name of the principal I wanted to filter with. When I go back and see the data, I have only two rows with the principal name as me. Now we know how to perform filter with single selection on people picker field. Now, if I want to filter my data on multi selection of people picker field, how we can perform is this time it will be little different. We will have to use in operator and then say staff dot email. So what happens is this will go and see where Krishna as a staff as part of the column staff. If I come back here, I have Krishna as only for one record. So what I got the result set as only one record. But if you notice here, I'm getting a delegation warning. The highlighted part of this formula might not work correctly on large data sets. Unfortunately, in SharePoint, we have the only specific operators can perform the operations without any delegation errors. Unfortunately, in is not a delegable operator, so it cannot get all the data if the data set value is more than 2000 records. So I highly recommend do not try to perform filter on a people picker field with multi selection enabled on that. The next field is date column. In our data source, we have the date column as exam result date. Now, in order to perform filter operation on the date column, I have added one date picker. Now here, I wanted to say exam result date equal to my date picker 2, which is date picker 2 dot selected date. Now my date picker has a value as 11/15/2020 because always date picker comes with the default values today's date. So let me change the date to 20th because I have my result date announced as 11/20. The time I change the value, I can see two records as my result set, which means that to perform the filter against a date column, the syntax is filter data source date column name equal to date column date picker control name followed by selected date. This will be straightforward. Most of the times filter in SharePoint is straightforward. Column name followed by a operator, whether it is equal, greater, less or not equal, followed by the value. Now we know this is how we can perform the filter on date column. The next field is date time field. If we see the data source, we have exam date as both date and time field. When we go here, I have clearly mentioned this field should be both date and time, and the value is I have mentioned 10:30 a.m., 10:45 a.m. But note here, friends, the date time, whatever you mentioned as part of the list will always render depends on your time zone. My time zone is PST. Now, when I come here to ensure that I have added a date picker, which is already there, and I have added one for hours, 24 hours, and this is for 24 hours, and this is for minutes, 60 minutes, and this is AM and PM. Now let us go ahead and see how we can write that. Here what we are doing is we have to join the date, hours, minutes, and the time zone AM or PM. So for that, what I have to do is first I have to concatenate the date picker value dot selected date. This is usually gives the date value, so I need to convert that to text followed by, because concatenate only works on the text. If you want to know more about concatenate, I have already created a video which explains the syntax of concatenate and how it works. Please go ahead and watch that video to understand that function and how that function works. Next one is I need to give a space between the time and the date. So I have added an empty space followed by drop down. First the drop down is hours drop down, selected dot value, whatever the value I have. Again, this one is giving a number, so I need to convert that into text. Next one is text of, now I have added hours. Now I need to add minutes, which is drop down to dot selected dot value. Now I need to add the AM or PM, which is drop down 3 dot selected dot value. So with this, what happens is I got all my date concatenated up to here, selected date time. Now this need to be converted to date time value. That will gives me a complete formula to filter my data source with the date time value. Date time value of first one is date column, data control, and the hours, minutes, and then AM and PM. Sorry, I missed to specify the column name, which is exam date time. Exam date time equal to this. So now if we see the result for this is 1:30 p.m. Let me say 1:30 p.m. because it converts to I have 1:30 p.m. for one record. So when we come back and examine the formula, filter data source, the column name is exam date time equal to date time value of my concatenated string, which is the date, hour, minute, and AM and PM. And if I just go ahead and change 11:45 1:45 a.m. I got one more record. Now this time the record ID is 3, and the third record has my time as 10:45, and I convert that PST to EST, which is 1:45 a.m. So this is how we can perform filter on date time column. The next field type is choice column. If we see in our list, the choice columns are qualified, is active. In Power Apps, the filter query, the choice columns is almost same as single line of text, but only one additional parameter we need to pass is qualified, which is my choice column. I need to specify against what value. This is what I need to, dot value is something I need to specify. The time I specify that, and if I see I have the results as 3 records as my results, wherein the qualified status as yes, qualified status as yes, there are only 3 records. If you want to filter choice field with multi selection, same here also we need to use in operator, like the way how we have used in operator for people picker multi selection, we have to use in. Here I am saying like concat the data source name followed by the column name and the separator. It will look into that. If there are any data, it will get the result as part of your gallery. And the next column type is currency column type. Here in our data source, the currency column is exam fee. Currency column and number column are exactly the same. There is no difference. Only the difference is at the time of plotting the data into SharePoint list. But in case of filter, both are same. All I have to do is I need to specify what is my value. If the value is equal, it will get the data. If the value is not equal, it will get the result set as a blank. So it is very straightforward. For currency column, specify the column name and the value you want to compare with. Or also I can say which is greater than 100 and less than 500. I can specify that. This way we can perform filter against the currency column. The next column is lookup column. For the lookup column is as good as the choice column. Lookup column here what we have is the exam location. Now exam location dot value or ID, which one you want to specify. Here I will say exam location as LA. Now I will get 2 records because LA was specified for 2 records. If I want to go with the ID, then I can go with the ID, but this time I need to specify the parent table ID, which is 3. I have to specify the value ID as 3. Since that the data we are showing in the list as value, I must specify only value. If in case the data in the SharePoint list is associated with the ID, that ID will work. If the data is associated with the value, value will only work. So ensure that what is the data rendering as part of the SharePoint list. This is how we can perform the lookup column. If you see, the similarity between the choice and lookup column are very similar. I am specifying the column name dot value and followed by the condition. And the next column is multi-lines text. Multi-lines text, here we have as exam notification details. Multi-lines text is something we have more text data. So in order to perform a filter against that is not at all a good idea. If you really want to perform, there are two ways, in fact three ways. One is you perform search on that data source. Search followed by data source name, which is student information, followed by what is the text I wanted to specify. Say that ID is my search text and followed by which column it is, which is exam notification details. Exam notification details. So what happens is it will go and search against that, but always do remember, search is not a delegable operator in Power Apps. So it will always give a delegation warning, may not work correctly on large data sets. In order to avoid that, what we could do is we could do starts with, but the starts with syntax is a little different. Starts with will be inside filter, filter student information, followed by what is the text we wanted to start with. So here we will say starts with the text is exam notification details and the string I wanted to start with is ID. If that data is in that, it will come. However, starts with is also not a delegable operator with multi lines of text. Starts with works very good if it is a single line of text. Example, here my single line of text is state. When I say, the same syntax will come without delegation warning, but the time I say exam notification details, I will get delegation warning because starts with doesn't work against multi-lines text. So always I would say avoid doing filtering against multi-lines of text. So the last column field type I wanted to discuss here is task outcome. The task outcome is exactly works same as choice field. Here task outcome column in our data source is exam result. So when you see exam result, I'll say dot value equal to whatever the value we have. Exam result we have here as qualified. So if I have data, I will get the data. This is how we can perform filter on various data types in SharePoint list fields. The tip for today's video is, if you see here, the drop down values are showing as 24. Ideally, I can specify the drop down values as an array like this, say like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is one way I can specify my drop down values, but not a intuitive and a effective way. So in order to show the drop down values, sequence of 24, which will show all the 24 number, and I'm showing 60 values. And most of the times we see a issue of my drop down should have a blank allow. So always make this property as allow empty selection true. So that will ensure that your drop down will also allow the empty selection. That empty selection behavior will only come on the published solution, or you need to close the app and reopen the app that is when you will see that behavior. This tip will help you ensure that your drop down population is quicker and with default value as blank. Like this video, add your comment this video to your friends and your team. Subscribe to my channel for all future notifications. My contact information. I'm highly available on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day.